So I will start with a quick introduction. First, welcome everybody and thank you for joining. It's a pleasure to have you here. I wish I could see you, but if not, that's also okay. I'll hear you at the end of the session. So as we spoke at and introduced you briefly at the conference, QUEX World is working on an education development. And for that, together with Wim, who will be your presenter today, we have worked on the Clinical Biochemistry and Neurofeedback Science, cBNS, which you will see a brief introduction today that will be completely presented by Wim. Following up with this webinar, we will show you practicalities regarding our education platform and the different cooperation methods on which QUEX World and our trainers can work together and continue the development of the education platform. So shortly after this webinar, we will send you invitations for the second part, which will be more practical. Wim has been a trainer and presenter in Benelux for more than 10 years now. He has been a guest speaker for, some of you may know him from our own conference, but he has also been in Amsterdam and in different other places. And I do not want to take too much of time presenting because he will be speaking a little about his background, but please welcome him. And with this, I'll give you the word, Wim, in continuing with the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. It's the first time I'm in a webinar and I'm a speaker in a webinar. I'd rather have you in front of me when I can talk normally, but we're in a world of virtual reality, so it's good that that is possible too. In this type of world where a corona is scaring us all. So I'll be going through the whole thing of the first big training. It will be 15, 16 modules, and I'll go through every slide now. So let's go on and start it. Sec. I need to go. Yes. So the name itself, Clinical Biochemistry and Neurofeedback Science, actually is derived from KPNI or CPNI. That's the education that I had. And actually, so it's a little bit of orthomolecular and psycho-neuro-immunological feedback. So in the line of the latest research, the latest natural health medicine, we see a sort of approaching natural health medicine approaching the regular health medicine, but on the other hand, still staying natural. So let's stick to that. So we go through the goal of the classes. I'll discuss a little bit of my background. We'll have a synaptic overview of the 15 modules, and there will be an evolutionary red thread. And the latest developments in research will be shown as much as I know them, of course. I'm not a super guy. I'm just someone learning too every day. So goal. So why would it be interesting to attend? To grasp a better understanding in the individual items in the matrix, how they link together, how they make the cocktail of life, so to speak. It enables us to recognize the connections and the pathways of what processes it activates, what reactions it gives, biochemical reactions, but it also always is a sort of cascade of events. It will enforce us to grasp the bigger picture, so we'll be able to see, sort of zoom out of the individual symptoms, so we get a better grasp at how to approach the problem. It will I'm sure encourage you to reconnect with the positive scientific research that has been done lately, and there was a lot of independent research that is really, really interesting, making nice connections, like in the microbiome and the microscopic world, not being Pasteur-like, scared of we are being attacked by the microbes and the bacteria and the viruses. We're not living in a world like that. We're living in the grace of those microbes and in the grace of the microscopic life. And it's not the other way around. We're not being threatened by them. It's just our imbalance that makes it, makes us sick. It's not really the attack from a virus. It will hopefully rediscover your awe for the job, because you will get another in-depth view and another more profound insight in what you're doing, and I think you will have much more success. So if I take a look at what I've done how I evolved actually the last 12 years or so, then it's really dramatic. The people come in and I scout them a bit, and then I talk a little bit. I see the body language, I see the matrix, I see a couple of screens, and actually I pretty much know already what's going on. So that it will help you to much quicker grasp the hitting point. Yeah. And of course, life altogether is a wonderful thing. So it's a beautiful cocktail of processes working together. Okay. My background, in my early life, I had a master's degree in diplomatic sciences and a master's degree in European law. I worked in the automobile industry in Ford Motor Company, and then later on in Mazda. And then I switched to a pharmaceutical company. I worked with Novartis for more than 10 years, international demand management, and in the Benelux logistics management. I had a pretty high function, because I had to sign off on a 10-year shut up agreement when I left the company. So I've seen a lot, but the 10 years have passed, so I can talk about it. I have a degree in natural medicine, Europese Academie in Antwerp. I followed some courses, oligotherapy. I had a degree in there, orthomolecular medicine, then clinical psycho-neuro-endocrino immunology. So the combination of orthomolecular and clinical psycho-neuro-endocrino immunology is in fact the cBNS now. Currently, I'm still following courses. I'm trying to get a degree in pedagogy. So that's how to teach, okay? But how to teach from in a level of being restful, being calm, getting the message across properly. But not only that, it's much, much deeper. It's how to understand. It's a lot of also psychology actually in there. So it's really, really interesting. As Andrea said, I have been a trainer in Belgium and Holland since quite some time. That's because when we were being trained, when we had some introductory courses on how to work with the machine, I really got caught up very quickly, and I started saying, yeah, no, you should do this and that and that. And that's how I got a sort of reputation. And then we formed little classes, and then that grew out to be more and more and more. And then I've taught some years of practice in Holland and in Belgium. I was very honored to be in a couple of guest speaker events in Copenhagen, Amsterdam, Budapest. I have been a speaker also with Novartis for some issues, but also in Switzerland actually. but that's a long time ago. And I'm enthusiastic, as you probably see, and nervous as well, and I still keep learning. Now we go to the overview of the modules. The first one will be a general introduction. It will give the history of origin of orthomolecular medicine. How did it come to be? We will go through the client intake, the building the rapport, the building and the good contact, so that the people say what is actually required to know. Right? But anyway, we have the system, so the system tells us a lot more than people say. There will be also the analysis of the data, the working mechanisms, how to build up a therapy plan to get the buy-in from the client. The deep learning is very important, I believe, very important, because if people know why they change their habits, why they change their food diet, why they change their way of living, and they grasp the why, then the success will be theirs, because they will take up their own lives again. And that's and when you connect the symptoms and the disabilities and the disease with the dysfunction, actually because of their lifestyle, because of their beliefs, because of their way of being, then that will be for them a major workup, because that will actually prevent that they will be sick again, and that they will develop chronic disease, essentially. So the deep learning will effectively get you the compliance, because they will know why that they have to boost their that specific pathway or that specific pathway, because they have neglected it since maybe years and years and years. Then the follow-up, and how in the follow-up then we also see what are the important systems, what are symptoms, and what are the less important symptoms. And then we also go to a little bit already on the ethics and documentation, but that's briefly. In the end, we go a little bit deeper, because it's well, we have a client, a patient-doctor relationship, so to speak. We cannot say that, but, or some maybe of you can, but we have a client, we have a partner relationship, and we should take that as an important feature. Part 2 will be, so that will be the introduction. We'll sort of get to meet each other, and then in part 2 we start with, okay, the big stuff, the macronutrients, what you eat. You should become what you ate, because we started eating actually a little bit the wrong stuff. We started changing diets, our body is not adapted to that. So we get, of course, adaptation troubles, adaptation problems. And when we start shifting our adaptation, then of course we get stress and distrust, and we get disease because of that. The macronutrients are then, of course, the proteins, and the amino acids, the fatty acids, so omega-3, omega-6, omega-9. There will be omega-7. There's a lot of fatty acids. There's the short chain, mid chain, long chain fatty acids. The fibers, why are they important? Actually, they're not food for us, but they're food for our microbes. So could be quite interesting. The carbohydrates, the sugars. Are there good sugars? Are there bad sugars? Of course, the industrialized sugars are not really good, because they're really demineralized, and they will demineralize you. But we'll go all through that. Is it wrong to eat some carbohydrates? Not all together, but there is a good process on looking at it. The current feeding habits in the modern world as we know it will be discussed, where then I go through the food pyramids and the vision of the World Health Organization, and the vision in orthomolecular medicine. so that we can say, okay, what is our body adapted to? What it's like, okay, when you drive a car and it's a car that drives on petrol, you don't start filling it up with gas. Okay, so it's basically that. Okay, then we go from the macronutrients, of which we need a lot, we go to the micronutrients that are quite essential to get our pathways going, our microscopic pathways going. That's the electrolytes, that's the minerals we need a lot of. The trace elements, that's the minerals we need a little of, and become probably toxic when we take too much. Okay, the vitamins, the water-soluble vitamins and the fat-soluble vitamins. Quite different in approach, because in the regular medicine they say that fat-soluble will be toxic in some time. Of course, if it's the natural kind, it will not become toxic or hardly become toxic. Of course, everything is a toxin if you take too much. So if you drink 5 gallons of water in one day, I think you will be dead by the night. So the flavonoids, what's the flavonoids? That's the sort of the antioxidants and the other antioxidant molecules that are quite interesting that we see in the plants. That's their struggle of survival that we actually eat. So our body incorporates then that ability a little bit, okay? And in the part 4, we go through the digestive system, evolutionary view. So we will cover a lot of evolutionary pathways or evolutionary elements in all the different parts, okay? The digestion pathway, we go through the physiology, of course, but we also inject left and right some elements. Oh, but this is linked with that. So if we do this, then, so later on, if we have a client who has some digestive problems or has a problem with incorporating actually fatty acids, why doesn't he absorb fatty acids? Okay, then we know that the gallway is very important, that the pancreas is very important, that the eating habits, and so on and so on. So it's all linked in together, it's all intertwined. Up to the bowel flora and the importance of the bowel flora, but we go much deeper into the microbiotic thing in a later part. And then we have some hypotheses that are interesting, the Aiello expansive tissue hypothesis, and that is a part specific in the orthomolecular or in the KPNI, or in the cBNS, of course, for you. Part 5 will be then the biotransformation. Now, we incorporate some foods and then we do something with it. And we make it ours, and we change and we grow with it, and we change our own possibilities. But if we eat the wrong stuff, of course, we make the wrong elements, and then we can have a sort of electrocution or a wrong cocktail. Eh? The liver functionality, of course, is very, very important in the biotransformation because that's the main element. Eh? The liver-brain correlation is then, again, an evolutionary element. The elimination pathway, of course, you all have heard about the elimination pathways, the bile, urinary system, skin, lymphatic system, but that's the biotransformation. What do we do with it? If there's something to dispose of, then we need to dispose of it. In part 6, we have the cellular biology. That's a pretty tough one that I've been working on, and I'll be talking about the story of the cell, how cell structures evolved. There again, yeah. The simple anatomy, physiology. So there will be definitely things that you've already studied, that you've already seen, but I will definitely link them to the other part. So it will be a welcome repetition, probably. Then, of course, the link with the homotoxicology and the homotoxicology screen, and because the extracellular matrix is very, very important. And then we go a little bit deeper on the genetics and epigenetics, because it's there that the epigenetics and the genetics happen. And that's something that is now definitely a theme in the world, because they are now developing the RNA vaccinations. So we have to question ourselves, is that a good thing? Is that not a good thing? It will definitely work on our genetics and epigenetics. So it will change things, okay? So they will help you to fight a virus with a virus. So it's always debatable, but I do have my question marks on that one. Now, the next part is part 7. There we talk about the energy metabolism, and actually it's all about energy. If there's no energy, nothing moves, okay? So if there's no energy permission, everything stands still. So everything needs to keep on moving. So we have, I try to really get partly into the detail, because the detail is quite interesting to follow. But of course, we'll zoom out and we'll go and talk about the essential elements. Okay, so the overview is the most important thing. But nonetheless, you should understand really the infinite interesting process of how organisms like ourselves, but how cells make energy. And we discuss, or at least I will discuss then the carbohydrate pathway, okay? Which hormones are involved, like glycogen, glycolysis, the neoglucogenesis. So those are all the processes on how we make energy or how we make glucose. And then we go through the Krebs cycle or the citric acid cycle. And that will cover actually on how we produce energy. And writing the module was a very good repetition for me as well, because I understood now why some food supplements work better than other food supplements. So it's good to know a little bit deeper on how everything works. And from the moment you get the understanding, then you see, hey, shit, that was a good thing. Then part 8, as I said, we go through the macroscopic world. We look at who is actually honoring us being our guest, or actually we should be grateful for us being guests in the microscopic world. And then how do we regard pathology and with respect to the microbes, all types of microbes and macroscopic little things. There again, I first start with a little story. I talk about the schism of natural medicine and chemical medicine. That's a timely thing, which discredited the natural health medicine. And it's now, I think the cBNS and the orthomolecular medicine will be sort of the way back on the converging of the two different visions, so that we will be more understanding in how everything fits together, how nature and people can work together and be together. The microbiome, so who lives with us? Why do they live with us? Evolutionary, how did it evolve? How did it grow? The contact points, influencing elements, contact points, that's then the mouth, the oral parts, the lungs, the skin, and of course the bowel, but that's not all, there will be more, okay? The distortions, corrective actions that we can make, and the distortions are mostly how we live. Will this balance the microbiome? Will look like an infection. And the external, there will be some external infections as well. When you start digging deep in the ground, or you go hiking somewhere and suddenly you get a deep punctured wound, of course, you can get some serious infections from the local microbes there that you did not recognize, and that will be a serious infection. Or you will catch a parasite and you won't be happy with that. Then the rickettsia, so we will talk also a little bit about Lyme, and that's rickettsia combined with Epstein-Barr, with a viral RNA. We already talked about the energy. How does the energy, how is energy produced? But now we get to the energy permission. So the energy permission, it's part of the three hormonal axles. The energy permission is from the thyroid out, thyroid together with pancreas, of course with the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland. How moving and exercise will actually enhance the energy permission. That wrong diet, too much stress, and non-activity or non-exercise will, of course, be bad for your energy permission. Evolutionary will look at the thyroid as well. We have T3 there as a permission. T3 is the thyroid hormone, the active thyroid hormone, as a permission to produce energy. The definition of hypoactivity, the corrective actions. Is there even a hyper and hypoactivity? Yeah, there is, but are they different? Maybe they're the same, but in different stages. And then we go through the pancreas. The pancreas, of course, is very important as well, because we have, okay, now we can put some on reserve. Now we really have to use some. So we have the insulin and the glucagon pathways to determine if we can store now some energy, or that we really have to activate some more energy. Linked to that, of course, insulin. We talked about, and you have insulin deficiency, you have insulin problems, you have the blood sugar problems, we have obesity and diabetes. You have potential also there, epigenetic groups that are more liable or more linked to potential problems with those types of disease. And then, of course, briefly, because those disorders, diabetes, obesity, they will have a serious impact on inflammation. As we see now with Corona, when you have the comorbidity of diabetes and you're obese, then definitely there will be a much higher impact of a potential infection. So there will be a much higher death rate. Okay, that's the first of the three hormonal axles. Then we go to the next one, the procreation axle. Procreation, that's of course the gonads, but there as well, we go from the base, we build it up, because actually it's all based on cholesterol. It's all based on transferring fatty acids, and the building blocks of also another type of energy, because the hormonal organization from adolescence to the menopause or the penopause, and because male people can also have some struggles and troubles, the impact on the growth of development of male and female, so the different development stages that young women have no need to worry too much when they stay a little small, that they will grow, but of course when they have the correct growing hormones. And the impact of the sex hormones also on the immune system will be discussed, because all the hormones in fact are messengers. Hormones are messengers. That's information. There's like internal little viruses talking to your cells and changing activity, okay? But they also influence your immune system. And so definitely from meno and penopause, then you can have serious trouble because of that. Then the pregnancy will be also discussed, and there as well, there is a serious influence on the immune system, because we should not really try to fight the foreign body of the baby. We should maybe keep it and then let it grow. And then of course, because otherwise we would have more abortions and then our species would not survive. But it does change our immune system as well. Then as part 12, I will discuss a little bit out of the brain. I thought I had also, just let me see, the stress axle I didn't talk about. I just didn't cover one. The stress, of course, yeah, that's the hypothalamus, the pituitary linked with the adrenals. Stress is also evolutionarily very, very important. Normally we had stress and then we had a physical reaction to it. Now we have stress without physical reaction, and that's something new. So there, of course, we have again distortions. We should, and I see that I didn't really get that slide in order. So maybe I'll go back to this stress axle a little later on, because I have it in my PowerPoint. Just a sec, okay? Now, we go through the rest first, and then in the end, I'll cover the stress axle again. Wound healing. Wound healing. How, if something breaks, it needs to be repaired. And the breaking and repairing is a sort of systematic thing. Either if it is the skin, that's the thing we see, or it's internal, that's the thing we don't see. We have lacerations, we have ulcerative processes, we have infection, inflammation, also internal. So all that inflammatory wound healing kind of thing is also, again, involvement of the immune system, because they are the proprietor of the enzymes necessary to restore tissue, but also to destroy tissue. So we need our immune system, even if it feels bad. Then the hormonal impact of on the inflammatory processes, because yeah, if it's one way, then it's the other way around as well. The physiology, requirements to make it happen, and of course, what you don't use, you lose. Meaning that if you don't, like, people say, well, you shouldn't use it because it hurts, and you really start not using it again, then it slows down the healing process. So we have to have the blood still streaming there, and you have the nerves that still need to know, hey, we need to repair something. If nothing is sensed, then nothing is repaired, okay? So also the mind is here quite important. If the mind is not thinking that it is possible, then wound healing won't happen so easily either. Then we go to a big part on the nervous system and the brain. Nervous system and the brain is something very important to humanoids. Physiology, the brain, nervous system, the neurotransmitter pathways. Actually, that's a very big chunk in our thing. But of course, we have the gut brain too, and that's also quite already discussed. But it's also very important. So there we also discuss the Aiello hypothesis, and that's linked. Okay. Then we have the emotional motor system linked into, and the limbic system, and of course you have the neurological impact, but also the emotional impact. So we go to that system. Then we have the mental disturbances, depression, sleeping disorders. We go to the reward deficiency syndrome, and we'll talk a little bit on the disorders that we could have on neurodegeneration. So there will be a lot of topics talked about on the nervous system and the brain, because we actually live this long, and we live longer and longer again. But that gives some complications, because we have to maintain also that brain and nervous system. 14, we talk about heart and circulation. So that's this part here. We have the bloodstream, but the heart as an energy evolved, also an evolved organ in survival. And we really talk about how the four-chambered heart came into being, why we have it. So the physiology, the energy sources also for the hearts, and then very important, the heart rate variability, because the heart rate variability shows how adaptive you still are to stress, to any kind of survival situation. The diseases of the heart, also some emotional, and we'll talk about the broken heart syndrome, for instance. The blood circulation as well, because what does the heart do? It pumps the oxygen via the bloodstream to all the cells. So it's quite important to know how it flows and why it flows this way, and why there's a difference between the arteries and the veins, and how they get clogged or dysfunctional, yes or no, and what we can do to really revert this. And how does it come that we got to that stage? Like atherosclerosis, how did we get to that stage? Why is that clotting there? Why do we have the hypercholesteremia? What's happening there? And why are doctors so fanatic about cholesterol reducing medicine? As number 15, we go through the immune system and its strategies. I was planning on coming to Budapest for a 3-day course session on the immune system. This will not take 3 days, so I will be talking about a sort of reduced version of that 3-day seminar. But the main elements will definitely be discussed: the insulin resistance, the low or sick thyroid hormone syndrome, the leptin resistance, the cortisol resistance and deficiency, and the catecholamine resistance and deficiency. Catecholamine is what is coming from the adrenal system. Okay. And those are the main parts. Then we have still a little part on ethics that we will discuss. The plan is also to have some case stories to work on, just to prepare or finalize the preparation, and to make sure that we have all questions sorted out before we have the exam. There will be the evolutionary red thread. The whole of our body work definitely has a purpose. We are wired together as we should, and we fire together as we should. So most disorders, most diseases are actually something you can forecast. You can tell, if you do this and this and this, that will be probably the outcome. Okay, with one person a little less than the other, but then there will be the epigenetic difference, or the previous period that you built up more reserves. There will be recent findings, there will be recent developments in research that I will that I will imply, that I will show, reports that are quite interesting, linking data together, but linking processes together, and also giving a sort of overview in the end on what are we doing. Orthomolecular medicine could be the link back to nature, so I actually see it that way. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think that orthomolecular medicine, the cBNS, KPNI will be, or cPNI will be the road of, okay, I will now be able to, because of I'm working also with independent studies, and they will link the regular trained medicine back into the, well, into the non-chemical way of living, potentially. Actually, I do have some good contacts with regular doctors that I'm working with in Belgium. And in fact, in Belgium, it's really hard to do that because we are actually not even existing. There will be direct references made on how to implement the course when working with your device. So I will link it to the device. I will link what the know-how of how we see the processes. I will give some protocols. I will really try to keep it as holistic possible, but not neglecting the necessary details, if you know what I mean. So the protocols, they will be yours as well, but the protocols, I always say, don't be guided mainly or only solely by the protocols, because protocols are a sort of guideline. This is where you could look at, this is where you could look at. Those are some hints. It's like the A to Z protocols. They are good when you're a starter, because you haven't grasped yet what the possibilities of the device are. You don't know yet how to navigate, but actually you should also follow in on the rapport you have with your client. You feel, you sense something, the talk with the client goes to a different level, and you start, and suddenly you're in their family. Okay, so you have to be open not to just follow protocol, because that's, that would be a sorry thing. Okay.